Hi guys, so let's now take a look at barriers to entry and exit. So let's firstly start with barriers to entry, and we can see that they're obstacles which prevent new entrants, new market participants, new firms access to a market. So it means they can't easily access that given market. Now within some market structures such as perfect competition, contestable markets and monopolistic markets, we'll see that there's very low or no barriers to entry. In other markets, those barriers to entry can be really significant. It's important just to have a good understanding of what these barriers to entry could possibly be. Now, you can also face barriers to exit if you are within that industry, within that given market, and of course this means that you can't actually easily get out of the market. So this prevents the incumbent firm from exiting a given market. Let's look at some of these categories of barriers to entry then. So firstly, they can be structural. So when you're dealing with a structural barrier to entry, it's about the structure of the industry. So for instance here, I've put down high startup costs. There could be very, very high costs that are actually required to actually get a business off the ground, and that can pose a real challenge if you want to compete within some industries. This is particularly relevant if you consider oligopoly style industries or market structures such as supermarkets, where it's very, very difficult to set up and compete with those types of firms. There may be, as well, of course, low-cost advantages that such industries can enjoy. So the fact that Tesco, Sainsbury's, Walmart and so on can buy in such vast quantities means there's enormous economies of scale which can be realised, and that helps them to actually keep their average total costs very, very low. You can't simply enter a market and compete on the same volume, therefore your cost curve is going to be much, much higher. Now, it might also be that there's high capital costs that are required. That simply is referring to the capital goods necessary to get that business going, and it might be sunk costs, such as the need for carrying out lots and lots of marketing, which is an unrecoverable cost. Once you've conducted that marketing, of course, you will not get that expense actually back. On to strategic barriers to entry. Now, this is really when incumbent firms within the industry actually look to ensure that barriers to entry are really being developed. Now, this is having a strategic approach to deter new entrants. So such examples which are really appropriate here could be using limit pricing. Limit pricing where you actually deliberately price just under what a new entrant could potentially offer if they were to actually enter the market and try to compete with you. So it means that you're really deterring market entry because, of course, you wouldn't be able to make a profit. Okay, moreover, it could be about vertical integration, and that vertical integration is about making sure that you have a whole sort of ecosystem which can help reinforce these low cost advantages. So of course Tesco wants to take over Booker, the cash and carry, and that is being seen as a possible example of developing a strategic barrier to entry as well as vertical integration. Of course, Tesco actually say, well, this is going to be good news for customers because it's going to mean greater low-cost advantages for our consumers. So therefore, they will benefit. Okay, it could also be as a result of collusive agreements as well, and this could be overt collusion, or it might be more tacit in its approach there. Now, if we're dealing with collusion, well, it's a circumstance where firms actually get together, and in the case of explicit collusion, they may agree to fix prices at a given level. Should they do so, well, that's illegal, but that will also act as a strategic barrier to entry, particularly if that is reinforced with market sharing based agreements under any such explicitly collusive agreement. So let's now look at our third point, which is about statutory barriers to entry. And these really present legal barriers to actually entering a market. I've put down examples here which could include contracts with incumbent firms within that marketplace that mean you wouldn't be able to actually come in and set up a new contract. It could be patents that actually exist on given designs and the unique product differentiation that's used with the existing firms, or it could be about license agreements that are actually established, as well as other government legal obligations that a business must abide by. Now, it's argued, of course, when you have a lot of statutory or legal barriers to business startup, that can really deter entrepreneurialism. Okay, so that's something that generally we want to avoid. We want to deregulate markets to ensure that you do have a lot of competition and a lot of contestability. Right, moving on. Let's have a look now at some of the barriers to exit. Right, moving on. Let's now have a look at some of the barriers to exit. So this could refer to the degree of capital immobility, and that simply refers to the fact that if you own these capital goods and you are now within that market, but you actually want to get out, you want to actually get rid of those capital goods, but they are not mobile. They cannot easily be used in other fields of production perhaps, and that can pose a significant barrier to exit. Certainly, in addition to that, can the point here about specialised assets with no resale value or little resale demand. Now, that would simply mean that you're unable to actually get a good price for those given products, those capital goods that you actually own, and therefore this would represent a significant sunk cost. Now, it may be better for you to continue operating within that given market until at least those capital goods are fully depreciated and fully being used out. And then finally, contractual obligations. So you might have a legal obligation to continue providing for a given period of time, and of course that contract needs to be seen out. Okay, great stuff guys. Look forward to seeing you next time.